FromSoft games are some of the most iconic video game properties out there. They are widely recognized for challenge, and most of them have arguably the most memorable bosses and weapons in gaming. Their most recent release was Armored Core 6, and like their other games, it provided many of the things that most people love when it comes to FromSoft titles. After successful completion of the game, I wanted to make a list pointing out some of the more fun and interesting Easter eggs from the other Souls games that you can find in Armored Core 6. Spoiler warning for endgame content and bosses ahead. Coming in at number 8, we have the Moonlight Greatsword. It's not a FromSoft game without the iconic Moonlight Greatsword. Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, and Demon Souls all have their own variation of this weapon, and I'm very happy to report that Armored Core 6 also has its own very unique variation. Not only does it have the iconic name and color scheme, but also has a very similar attack pattern to that of its predecessors by shooting out this powerful beam of blue light. While it may not be the classic Hilton blade weapon, I love how this version of the Moonlight Greatsword has a style that matches the futuristic style of Armored Core. Coming in at number 7, we have bosses that came back for round 2. In most FromSoft games, there's usually one major boss who lets you think they're dead for a short period of time, only to come back ready to slay out even harder than they were before. The Guardian Ape from Sekiro is definitely the first one that comes to mind, and in Armored Core, there is a midway boss that does something very similar. Once you wear down IB/CEL240, or as I like to call her, Robot Melania, she unexpectedly returns for round 2, acting much more erratic and presenting quite the challenge, making her one of the more difficult bosses in the game. Next at number 6, we have pinwheel enemies. Armored Core 6 has a plethora of enemies that you fight, however none are more memorable than these autonomous bladed wheel guys. What makes them difficult is their speed and how you can really only damage them from the side. The funny thing is that these enemy types usually appear in FromSoft games, primarily in the Dark Souls series, in the shape of these bone wheel enemies, whom also provide an enemy encounter that I would say is less than fun. Coming in at number 5, we have multiple endings. Like every FromSoft game before it, Armored Core 6 also has 3 endings in the form of a good ending, a bad ending, and a true ending. One thing that sets Armored Core 6 apart, however, is that for each ending you will actually fight a separate final boss, which makes your choices you make throughout the game feel even more impactful, and I hope that other FromSoft games in the future adopt this concept. Imagine the scenario that you were playing Elden Ring, and if you chose a different ending you had to fight an entirely different godlike being that wasn't the Elden Beast. It's definitely just wishful thinking, but it would be really awesome if you had more than one reason to go back and play the game multiple times other than simply getting new items or to increase the difficulty. And next at number 4, we have a boss that you can only defeat with one weapon type. In Dark Souls 3 we had Yorm the Giant, in Elden Ring we had Rykard, and in Armored Core 6 we have an enemy known as the Ice Worm. What makes these enemies all similar is the fact that you can only bring them down with a specific weapon, and while many people complain that this is a lazy trope, I feel at this point it's just a fun FromSoft tradition. At number 3 we have yet another FromSoft trope, which is starting out as an underdog. In Sekiro you start the game in a pit in jail, and Elden Ring and Dark Souls have you start the game as an undead or tarnished. Armored Core 6 has you start as an independent mercenary who crashes on the planet Rubicon, and you have to make a name for yourself by completing lowly contracts until you get noticed by the bigger corporations, which eventually unfolds into a story that ends up shaping the future of an entire planet. I've always enjoyed this concept of starting out with nothing and having to forge your own path to success through pure determination. It creates this sense of accomplishment that you can always expect upon completing any FromSoft title. Coming in at number 2, we have the infamous pizza cutter weapon. Both Bloodborne and Elden Ring had an iconic weapon that was always referred to as the pizza cutter. Armored Core 6 also has a weapon that is kind of similar to this, and while it may be a stretch to call it a direct replication, the chainsaw attachment, when fully revved, delivers a very similar attack to that of the pizza cutter from the FromSoft games of old. And at number 1 we have one of my favorites, which is this attack that Air does, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, when you fight her after choosing the bad ending. If you manage to get her to do this animation, you will notice that it is almost a perfect shot-for-shot attack that Melania also does in Elden Ring, where she sends out these shadow clones of herself to do small portions of damage and then follows in herself with a very powerful sword attack. I didn't actually see this on my first playthrough, and so I'm really glad that I went back to S rank this mission, otherwise I would have completely missed it. So there's 8 really cool Easter eggs from other FromSoft games that made their way into Armored Core 6. I'm sure that there are plenty more, and if there are any that you may know about, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm actually quite interested in what I may have missed. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.